Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hello.
Is this thing on?
How do we work this thing?
It's that kind of a morning.
So we all got together on the couch today and we didn't know what we were talking about.
So we're going to talk about what we're wearing. do you see, like...
Look at our wardrobe.
There's a pattern going on.
And it's symmetrical.
We were just commenting how this is not planned at all.
Never.
This is such good content.
It's important.
Thank you guys for watching.
No, did we talk about like being you last time? Like, I don't remember what we spoke about a week ago.
I don't remember.
I just actually came from the ESB in Brazil, and like it was actually really amazing, and there's so much about it, so I'm not going to go on about it for an hour, but it was really awesome to see the people who chose it, because it's not cheap, especially in Brazil, and so the people who chose it, they really fully chose it, and Dane spoke about that in the class as well, and you could see that, like the willingness to be there and to be present and to be there no matter what, and the vulnerability they were willing to have and the questions they were willing to ask and everything that they were willing to receive was so incredible and so amazing to be a part of that, and that enthusiasm and demand. And even for me, like I spoke about before, how I made a demand in Australia like a month and a half or so ago, and I've been being me more and more since then because I'm not willing to be anything else. And this class even more so, like it's just, even more so in the space of everything that was that class, I was willing to be me. And more and more as the class went on, again, like it's amazing how much more you can get of yourself, even when you think you're being yourself, and how much more shows up. So I'm just really grateful for this whirlwind weekend where I didn't sleep, worked like crazy, and was in this amazing class and event with all these beautiful people to like acknowledge and realize how much I am being me and how much more there is every single moment. So I'll start the topic with that.
Well, I just had a session this morning with a friend of mine. She finally reached out. I guess she's been in a funk for like a couple weeks, and so we just did a quickie session this morning, but it was really that, like almost everything that I'm talking to people right now is about having their reality. And I've been there a lot too. And I think we've sort of touched on this in some of our conversations, but like I'd say in the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially, there's been this ongoing every 10-second demand to continue to choose the real me, like will the real me stand, and not from the space of like, this is the real me and this is the fake me, but like the real me that is capable and can do things and is happy and is possibility, and like that me instead of the other me's that I've created, which are pathetic and can't do it. And so there's been a I don't know, I've had to really like keep choosing that in the face of all these other places that my mind wants to go, or all these other places that I'm aware of in other people's universes. It's definitely not my universe. And so, yeah, I think it's up for a lot of people. And
yeah, I think so too. And I mean,
in a way that it hasn't been before. Like,
no, and I jokingly, the beginning of January, kind of started this hashtag Year of You 2018. And I think it's actually appropriate and accurate. Like, I think this might be the year of you, the year where you get to know you, you choose you, you play more and more with being you, no matter what, like no matter what situation you're in, no matter what's going on. And actually just go ahead, Kirsten.
Well, like talking about that too, like just what I've been noticing for me lately too is in being you, it's like also asking questions, like what would I actually choose here? So
yeah,
there was a couple of situations that came up, and normally I would just be like, someone asked me if I could do something, I'd be like, yeah, I can do that, like no problem, like I can do that. And then I'm like, but do I actually want to choose that, and will that actually create the reality that I would like to have in my world? And when I actually stopped for a moment and asked the question, it was a no, not to automatically just do that. And so it's like, for me, it was like, it's actually being me in the sense of listening and actually asking questions in that too.
Hey, and if you guys are watching live, if you want to post, like, where is this coming up for you? Like, are there any areas of your life where you feel like you're not being you, or do you have questions about that? Do you know what that is? Like, how is this showing up for you? I'd love to hear from you, and we can chat about that too.
John's trying to be him and get his arm in a good position, but it's
awkward.
Just kidding. But it is actually.
Whilst not trying to grab your ass. So.
Just grab it.
It's interesting because this morning I actually had a really cool, like I pinpointed something, and it's like for a long time I had not been me. Like, you know, you guys had the pleasure of living with me at that time. But it's like that's where I made that demand when I went to Australia of like, okay, this stops now. And this morning I got, like, it was in May actually that took place, and it was so, and because I knew like, yeah, like sometimes it's June already and blah blah blah, and so I was looking at it and I was like, wow, like I've literally been trying to be somebody else, and so I've been in because I can't be like, and I mean especially me, I've always been me, which is why I've always been so weird and stood out, and so trying to be somebody else. And as a specific person has been just a conflict in my world the entire time. Yeah, it's fresh. So it's, yeah, I don't know. That's all I got. That's where I got to.
Well, the conversation I was having with my friend this morning was similar energy, in that, you know, she's, and this has been showing up for me too, like her reality is so different. Her reality is so different. And it's ease, and there's brilliance, and there's capacity, and there's happiness that in this reality.
This is happy.
This is happy. But that's the acknowledgement of you. Yeah. And what you're choosing, and what you're choosing to be, no matter what anybody else thinks about it or has about it or reacts to it. And that's a weird way to be. Like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And I know for me, like I was always so weird, and I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends, a lot of the people that I coach and facilitate have always been really weird. And at least what I did is I put that shit deep undercover, and yet my life works better when I'm choosing that.
Well, it's interesting too, because this weekend, like, we're in Brazil, and Brazil does amazing things. It's a Latino country, so they do confusion in a way that I've never seen it. Like the last time I was there, I was really confused the entire time, and I couldn't quite get out of that. And then this time, I was more prepared for it. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna have this organized, and especially like registration, like coming to class and having to pay, and there's so many new people. Like the ESB was. I would say 95% new people who came to class.
Amazing.
So yeah, really, really awesome. But it's, you know, I looked at like just taking this registration and making sure we had plans in place, we had people in place, that we had enough so that it would run, or at least attempt to run as smooth as possible. And it was so smooth that the whole time I was like, what, like really? And I had to pock and pod myself for thinking that something else was going to show up. And it was interesting because I was talking to a couple friends afterwards, and I was still stunned and shocked at how much ease, like what you were saying, when you're being you, there's this ease, how much ease there was in that whole registration process. And one person was like, yeah, you know, like you need to acknowledge like how much you are being that, and how that's showing up because you're being that, and you're here and you're demanding that. And I was like, yeah. And then somebody else was like, yeah, and it'll continue to get easier. And I was like, huh, what do you mean by that? And it was almost this like takeaway of that acknowledgement of me, which I wasn't at that moment willing to acknowledge how much of that was me. And I was working on that. And one person said that, and the other person was trying to take it away. And it was really cool because I asked a couple times, like, what do you actually mean by that? And the person wasn't answering it directly. And so I kept sort of wondering and looking at that and going like, huh, that's actually really cool. I'm not letting anybody else take anything from me. But what it is doing is it's bringing my awareness back to where I'm not willing to acknowledge who I be and the energy that I'm creating. So it really is that thing of like, when you're being you, you are happy, and there is this ease, and there is this joy. And, you know, if you're willing to acknowledge that, you can also see when somebody's willing, or when somebody's trying to take it away, or trying to make it smaller, or, you know, less amazing, or whatever. Like, I don't really know what that was, and I don't really care even. It's more for me, I noticed like, that's really interesting. That's something different. And it's not true. Like, what I do have to acknowledge is I have to acknowledge me in this moment. So, you know, how many times do you have that where you actually listen to other people, or you get influenced by other people, instead of, you know, listening to the moments and then looking at it and being like, oh, like, what is actually true here? Like, what would I like to choose? And where would I like to go with this?
And I think really on that, like, what I think you've really touched on so well is the places that we are being amazing, and then the places where people try to make you smaller, or, you know, don't want to acknowledge that you are being that. And how often we really do then buy that as being real, instead of just like, no, actually, I did change something, and by me being something different, actually changed something here, and like really acknowledging and not letting someone else take that acknowledgement away.
And that's actually a really great point, because in that same conversation, even a month ago, or, you know, the rest of my life previous to this moment, I would have so easily gone, oh yeah, it wasn't me. I would have so easily agreed with that one person, instead of looking at what was much more difficult, of somebody going like, yeah, have you acknowledged you in this? Which takes so much more, like so much more to acknowledge you, and then, because it humbles you, and it is way bigger than you. But the acknowledgement of that takes so much more of you and from you to actually acknowledge that. And it's so much easier just to go with somebody putting you down, or if somebody else doesn't do it, you'll do it. That's our go-to. That's the easiest thing to do, to make it smaller, make it, you know, it wasn't me. I didn't do that to just disacknowledge you, really.
We've got some really cool comments and questions here too. Like Elizabeth said, realizing I can receive judgment when I get judged, when I'm being me and not reacting to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's big. And hi, I just had this conversation with my 8-year-old. Lynn said,
nice.
I told him I won't pretend anymore. I won't hide my anger or sadness from him. I felt like I had to pretend to protect him for so long. So that's cool. And Christian said, hey guys, good to see you again. At the moment, I'm a bit overwhelmed from all the courses and calls and programs. I would love to join and attend so many of them, but I realize it's because I think I need to fix something or to get it right, which is to diminish my awareness and power. So I'm kind of trapped.
Yeah, and actually that's a really cool comment too, because it is that thing of, the more you actually acknowledge you, the less you can actually create you as a problem, because you have to acknowledge all the good bits. So then more of the good bits show up, and
that's annoying.
Good being relative. I know, it's annoying.
Well, and one of the things I was remembering the other day was when I first started in with all these access tools, like infinite choice felt overwhelming. I didn't have any other. It was like, and access as a body of work, as a body of tools, as a body of classes. When you have that as a point of view, that infinite choice is overwhelming because there is so much choice. It's like going to the buffet and you can have everything that you want. And what do you choose to solve this thing that you secretly think is wrong with you, that you don't even know is wrong with you, that you don't even know what to choose?
Well, and that brings up, like, you know, if we're talking about a buffet, like how many times have you gone up to a buffet and you get back to the table and somebody else has something different and you're like, I didn't even see that.
I didn't know that was a choice.
Right. That's exactly it.
Like,
now. You know, when you talk about infinite choice, but when that's new and you didn't know that was there, you can't see infinite choices. They don't even show up because you can't even see them through the conclusions or points of views or things that you bought into, the lies and the promises and whatnot. So they aren't there to begin with.
Right. And the reason I prefaced what I'm about to say with that is that what I had to start learning how to do, which I didn't know how to do, was access what I know.
Yeah.
What's actually going to create for me in this moment. I had to start learning how to, it was not even learning how, because I know that I know that I know, but I didn't know that I knew. So it's like strengthening a different muscle. Because for me personally, I was used to going out into the world or looking for my problem and trying to find the solution to my problem outside of me, all this outside of me stuff. But I wasn't used to going, hey, what's true for me in this 10 seconds? And actually getting really present with me in that moment and going, what's true for me? What do I know? And what would I like to choose? And what do I know would expand my life right now? And there was just a whole different way of going about it that didn't have to do with solving a problem or fixing anything about me. It actually, and I didn't notice at the time, it was an acknowledgement that I do know. And that's one of the first things to really start to get, is that somewhere in there you know what's going to create for you. You know what next step you can take that's going to expand your life beyond your wildest dreams. Like, you know.
Even if you're trying not to know.
Even if you're trying not to know, pretending that you know, denying that you know. And that one piece of information started unraveling all this place where I was going into confusion about all the different choices and infinite choice, and I don't know what to choose. Because all of that was coming from trying to get it right. And you can't get it right because there is no right. The only thing you can do is create what's going to work for you. And so I started just asking, well, what do I know about this? If I did know what I wanted to choose, what would that choice be? And bringing it back to what I know.
And it's interesting because, we have like that list of 10, the 10, what are the keys of possibility or something?
The 10 keys to total freedom.
Yeah, that.
I'm doing a class on it right now.
But it's like the first one is, would an infinite being choose this? And that's such an interesting question because I gotta say, like, having been in Access now for 6 years or so, 7 almost. Wow, that's a long time.
It is a long time.
Yeah,
you're old.
I know. I've actually never really, truly been able to ask that question. Because when I asked that question, would an infinite being choose? Well, of course not. Like, I know the right answer. But it wasn't until this morning, like, after I've had this experience where I'm like, fuck, I've been trying to be this other person the whole time to try and be what they required me to be. And so this morning I'm like the question that came to me was that one, and it was more like, if I was an infinite being, would I choose this? And it was that, and I actually looked at would Carlina choose this? Because if I'm being me, that's who's choosing. But that was the first time in all of these years that I've actually been able to look at that question as an actual question, which is really cool. Because I was going to say, this is a great question for that. And then I'm like, yeah, except for the last 7 years for me, it hasn't been. So the questions we do have all of these tools and all of these questions. And, pick your favorites and see what works. Like, who am I being? Like, am I being me? There's so many questions that do work. And then every once in a while, it's like, now I can use this question because now I actually get it.
Mm-hmm. Christian said, very helpful, thanks. Nothing to solve or fix, just getting aware of all I know. Yeah. We're not wearing our "you're not as fucked up as you think you are" shirts today, but it still applies. And we haven't forgotten about you, Sarah. Hold on, we're getting there. There's this thing about mornings where I repetitively am not being me. I forget a lot in the mornings. I wonder what we're aware of.
I used to have a loop that went, who does this belong to? And I played it all night. And you do tend to, it's kind of fun because you wake up lighter in the morning because it's been playing all night. And
it was just like, who does this belong to?
Yeah.
Who does this belong to?
Right, want to go back, return to sender, blah, blah, blah. Like, just, and loop it over and over, and I'd play it all night.
But you're saying that like these people know how to make a loop. So,
sorry.
Who does this belong to? Return, can you?
So you would ask, like, who does this belong to? And everything that is, can I now return it to sender with consciousness attached? Right, wrong, good, bad, puck, pot, all night, shorts, boys, and beyonds. You can also ask, like, is this mine? And I like both questions, so I would alternate. Who does this belong to? Return to sender, right, wrong. And then, is this mine? Everything that is. Destroy, not create. Right, wrong, good, bad, pop, all my shorts, boys, beyond.
And by a loop, she means like actually recording it on a device. So there's apps on your phone called Voice Loop where you can actually say that into your phone. Just press play and it'll just play it all night long on a low volume. And I didn't know that, so I would like record it and then put it into iTunes and like have it on repeat. Or you can record it on GarageBand or something like that.
Yeah, whatever you know.
Yeah. So that's one tool you can use. And she goes, it feels like depression, and I know it's not, because the minute I start having conversations with other people or I go out into the world, it's no longer there.
Okay.
I'd like that morning spiral to stop so I can be me. What is that?
Well, there's a good thing, and it's like, you know, if you didn't turn on the loop or you don't know how to make it and you're making yourself wrong for that, because nobody's ever done that, just when you wake up, like I also used to have a whole bunch of questions that I would read where it's like, oh, who does this belong to? Who am I being? You know, what would I like to choose today? What would I like to create? You know, what future would I like to create? So what if you start your morning off with 10 or 20 questions that actually starts to create your day rather than come in from the funk of everything that you're aware of everyone all around the world. I can't talk today. But what if you actually acknowledge you and what you're aware of, and then acknowledge whether or not you actually need to do anything with that awareness or just allow it to be information for you.
Yeah, and that's the key piece of it, is that it's awareness and it's not you that's depressed. And I think that's one of the biggest things biggest lies that we buy into, is that everything that we feel in our bodies or have sensations about in our bodies or have in our heads is ours. Because it's there and it's in our space, it must be ours. And that's, I know we talk about that a lot in Access, but it's becoming more and more real.
and it's the thing of like, even when you know that, still taking the moment and acknowledging it, because the more you acknowledge it, the more it shifts and changes and creates that space.
Yeah, I think it's like the thing is that you do acknowledge it. Like, I know a lot of people say, well, you know, I have this intensity or this depression or whatever, this, you know, heaviness. And then, you know, if you ask yourself, yeah, you know, who does this belong to? And I return to center, nothing changes. It's like, also just acknowledge that it's like, you're just aware of that. And just like really actually acknowledging that you're aware of that. And, you know, you can do the return to center and all that kind of stuff. And it helps, but it's also like actually really acknowledging, I'm aware of something here. And that awareness doesn't mean that it is mine, that I have to take it on as mine. And I think that's really the big thing that acknowledgement does. It really does create more space for you in that moment.
And I actually also want to make a comment about your kid. I forget who said that. But she was talking about how she went to her 8-year-old and said, like, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to pretend anymore. And it's, yeah, it is that thing of like really truly being you and not just in secret. Like, and kids are, oh my God, like, fuck, they see right through you. Like, you can't hide anything from them, especially your own. And so it is like, there's this huge demand that's now in your world of actually being you and being, like, damn it, and being that example to your kid, and also can't talk, the like inspiration that you be. And it's like, when you're willing to be that, like, definitely use your kid, and when you're willing to be that for them, you actually also become that for the rest of the world. Okay, you go. Yay! Keeping up with makeup this morning.
Yeah. And I don't have kids, but I can tell you that, like, every single thing that I've chosen, you know, to have these people in my life, to be in a relationship with John, came with a kid. And also, like, it doesn't matter if it's a kid or somebody else, like, you know, every single thing that you choose is actually an invitation to be more of you. Yeah. And sometimes it looks like a backwards invitation. Like, oh, this means now with my kid, I said I'm not going to hide anything anymore. So I'm not hiding the ugly stuff or the stuff that I was trying to protect you from anymore. That sort of looks like a backwards invitation. But in reality, it's not a linear pathway, but it's like there's a pathway in that choice to more of you that you don't even know yet. Like, you don't know how that's going to show up yet. There's a greatness in there that you're now willing to choose that's showing up in this sort of backwards way. And
there's also with that choice, like the cool thing that, as Carolina said, your kids are aware of what's truly going on for you.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to hide that and mask that, you're actually sending a message of confusion in a way, because energetically you're being you, and then what you're saying that comes out of your mouth or pretending or whatever, you're trying to mask it, and they are aware of the incongruence. And so when you actually are like, okay, I'm actually going to, whatever is up for me, I'm actually going to show it, I'm actually going to be it, I'm not going to try to hide it. It also shows everyone in your world, your children, whoever interact with you, that you are willing to be all of you together. And so you aren't being incongruent with yourself, and you're not being incongruent with the world. You're just being you, and whatever that happens to be. And when you choose to do that, regardless of what you're going through in that moment, when you actually choose to do that, people are aware of that, and there's something that they then see in you, that they're like, wow, this person's actually choosing to be them. They're choosing to be congruent with themselves on all levels. And that's what becomes an inspiration for others to actually choose to do the same.
Yeah, and that is the real gift. And whether it's for your child or, for somebody you live with, or for somebody walking down the street, it's that gift of you choosing you and you being congruent with all of that, and not pretending and not lying. And that is a gift and an invitation to someone to actually choose that they're not going to get, that they've probably never had in their lives, or very rarely. And I gotta say, like, I've shamelessly used my kid for that reason. Because there are times where, I'll just be something, like I'll be that incongruency because that's what I've been taught. And then I've gone to him and just been like, hey, like, that was not congruent, or like, that was not really what was going on. And I'm sorry that I pretended, or I'm sorry that I wasn't truthful. And there are things like, I went through a whole court case. There's things I can't tell him. Like, there's things that he does not need to know about his dad. But when I've been incongruent, he's aware of that. So, as much as possible, I've tried to be like, yeah, you know what, I'm having a hard time with this right now. That's congruent. He doesn't need to know the details, but that's being congruent with what's going on, instead of going like, no, everything's fine. It's fine, honey. Like, that's fucking bullshit, and we all knew it. And we knew it when we were kids, and we know it now, and they know it just as much. So it's really that thing of going like, yeah, like, it's not okay, and it will be. And I will be fine, and we'll be fine. But right now, I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, and where this has been showing up for me is, like, John and I have been having a bunch of conversations lately, just sort of nutting out some stuff. And last night I had this awareness of when something bothers me, or when something's tweaking me, my first response is to go quiet and to start using tools on my own. But I walk around the house as this seething storm of something, And
what are you talking about?
Yeah. And how that was showing up between him and I was like, don't touch me, get away from me, go live on the island for 3 days. Like, in fact, it'd be better if you just died for a minute, so that I didn't have to it was just showing up in this way where, we didn't actually I didn't get to be me, and he wasn't being him. And so our conversation last night was about, and it was a question you asked. It's like, what can we be I forget what you asked. And I was like, there's no way. Because because everything dries up at that point. Like, there's just no way that we can just go through this and just choose to, like, be together. Because it's like, no, I don't feel like it. And that I started hearing myself, I don't feel like it. I don't want to do this. And the moment I realized that I was where I'm suppressing what's actually going on for me because I'm afraid of who it's going to kill or what's going to happen or what I'm actually going to say that's going to destroy somebody. I mean, all this story that I've told myself where I'm trying to suppress something that's clearly there.
Which is actually very interesting because when, I love you, and I can say this because I love you.
Yeah.
But it's when you're walking around, and also because I am this. when you're walking around, right? And you are this, I do the same thing. I'll keep it inside, and I'll just brood, and good fucking lord, you think you're keeping it inside, but there ain't nothing inside.
There's nothing you're hiding.
But it's when you're being that, you are this explosive bomb. You are killing everyone. And not that you're killing everyone, but
and
you
myself.
are. And it's funny because that's the very thing you're afraid of.
Right.
But you are in the middle of being that, which is so interesting. I just realized that.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't realize how much it kills me.
Yeah.
Because as soon as we have a conversation, all my sexual energy comes back. All my willingness to be myself comes back. My willingness to laugh and play, all that comes back. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
How do I get there from here was where I was going. And I'm realizing it's the being willing to be as fucked up as I secretly think I am in that moment.
Yeah.
Where I get violent inside.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's on the other side of this yet. Because this is a pattern that I've had.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how long.
Yeah.
Since I was a kid, where in my family, it was not okay to be that. I remember actually violence is not an option was a thing that my violence is not an option. Anger was not okay. And I get angry a lot about a lot of things, it turns out. The more me that I'm becoming, that's a facet of...
See, but then there's another aspect to that. Anger shows up when there's a lie attached.
Yes.
So it's when you go into shoving it down and into
tools. I gotta use my tools because this is too intense or whatever.
Right, but it's it's so interesting because you shut it down because you're nope, whatever. One, you instantly stop being you. You don't get to be you anymore. And if you if we lowered our barriers, you still get to be you, and you get to be angry or get to look at everything, and you get to be whatever energy is coming up. And it's okay because you haven't made it wrong. So it is that thing of if you're willing to be vulnerable, if you're willing to have your barriers down, if you're willing to be wrong, no matter what, and if you're willing to not have a problem, and just let all the ugliness ooze out.
And I think it also comes into the allowing your being willing to acknowledge what you are being in that very moment.
Yeah. Yeah, big time.
Right? And just acknowledging I have this energy that I'm so mad that I'm going to kill everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Or, whatever it is, but just acknowledging it to yourself and then having that allowance for yourself, just having that allowance of hey, that's what I'm going to be. I'm actually going to show up as that. I'm not going to try to mask it in any way.
And I have done that quite a bit lately too. It's oh, I'm pissed right now. Oh, that's interesting. but that's where really it's that acknowledgement of oh, this is the energy, and the allowance is cool, I am angry, and it's and there's shit coming up. But that acknowledgement actually allows the allowance to show up. And even what you were saying, it's I go inside and I start using tools, and it's what if even that acknowledgement? Oh, look, here I go. Oh, look. And then you can still do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it's not always easy to change it in the moment, but acknowledging oh, here I go. This is what I do. This is what I was looking at.
Yeah.
And then using tools to actually get yourself out of it. And the next time it's oh, here I go again. Look at this. And then at some point you'll be ooh, I was about to choose that. Would I like to?
Yeah.
Because you actually have the choice to choose something different.
Totally. That's the gift of awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get it's going to be a few minutes of...
Yeah. We'll be aware. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Oh, here she goes.
Yeah, there she goes again. She's not yet blowing.
But isn't it cool that we can see it and that we can totally acknowledge it and then choose different?
Yeah.
In every moment.
Yeah, this past week has been weird. It's been weird and it's been uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's also been like super fun and empowering, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, it's really weird, and I've even kind of stopped sort of wondering, well, how does this work? Well, what makes it work, right? So it's really, I've been, there are many tools, and really at the bottom of it all for me, what's been working for me is just like always, what is it? Like whatever I encounter, whatever I'm getting, if something comes up, or even when I'm really feeling joy of like, what is it? And that gets me to acknowledge what is and whether or not I want to change that. And also, if I don't want to change that, to acknowledge I don't want to change that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wallowing in my shit, or I'm wallowing in my bristled anger, or you know, I'm kind of enjoying this intensity of like being pissed off. So, and what's cool is that, and I get to enjoy and kind of acknowledge that, and then like magic, it just kind of disappears into, like, it dissipates into something else. And what's been really cool for me is just, well, I mean, it's there's always this focus of what Christel and I are creating together, playing our lives. And I asked for the impossible yesterday. We're having this really intense conversation, which is also really very cool. It really pushes, certainly me, speaking for myself, like kind of to the limit of what I think I'm capable of and what I'm aware of and what my knowing is. And a lot of times I'm kind of sitting there wondering, like, I don't even, like, my brain scrambled. I don't even know what words are there to respond. And I've just been going with, okay, so really, I mean, we're in this situation where we're in this one situation where we're having this intensity with each other, and I want to change it. And what I want to change seemed kind of like an impossibility, which is like you want me dead, like energetically dead right now. And I'm like not happy. She wants me energetically dead. No, I don't think I'm going to do that.
John, really?
I don't think I'm going to just roll over. I don't think I'm going to show you my back. Is what I'm doing. And at the same time, I wanted to acknowledge that I'm like just feeling intense attraction and desire for it, even at that time.
Even though you want me
dead.
That is amazing about you.
I asked, what can we be if we could have this intense conversation and not be like quote unquote happy with each other, and still have the appreciation and the attraction and
I'm like, no, that's impossible. I have feelings.
So,
which, by the way, is not a question.
So what was?
I have no possibility in that whatsoever. Which is when I started hearing myself. That was the gift of this conversation.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Is I got to see where I was really functioning from, which is like, everything you're asking right now is not possible.
You can't have that.
You can't have that.
And it's so
You asked
amazing.
for that.
Feelings.
I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Do you understand what's going on in my body right now? Like, this is real.
And it was so fun for me to just go, okay. And
then I heard myself and I'm like,
and
shit.
as if by magic, she goes, want to go on a date? This shit doesn't work at all.
No. Because, and what I started to see was, as we were talking and willing to engage in this conversation, and that's been the gift of all of us living together at different times, like, whatever's been brought up is now, then we go into it and we lower our barriers and we engage. And we're like, okay, so what does it take to change this? And so that's what he and I have been doing. And I got to see last night that area where I was totally doing feelings. And what I mean by that is that there's always other choices available. But when you yourself are functioning from this place of impossibility, then that's what you create, is impossibility. And that I didn't realize I was functioning from there. And the gift of knowing that that's where I was functioning is going, oh my God, this is totally where I go. I go into hardcore control and feelings. And how cool is that? Because now I see it. And once you see something, you can't unsee it. So
and
now
you can change it.
And you can change it.
Yeah.
And that's fucking amazing. And then there was this other place where I realized I was functioning like a this place where basically I was protecting my money, my room, my space, my food,
never done that.
mine, fuck you very much. You know, like that's what was going on. But again, I hadn't been able to see that until we got into this conversation. And he's like, well, this is sort of my experience of it. And I'm like, whatever, you're fucked up. And then I actually started looking at it like, I totally have that point of view. This is mine, and you need to stay the fuck out because don't touch my shit. Any of it. Even though I'm saying with my mouth, we're creating together, and this is ours.
There's that congruency thing.
Totally not congruent. And also totally not me, because when I started looking at it, just kind of circling back around to our original topic, I was like, who does that reality belong to? Yeah, our original topic.
But yes.
Who does that belong to? Who does this mine reality belong to? Because is that me? I've been functioning from it for a long time. He's been at the effect of it.
Nothing like taking one from the team.
But is it mine? And I got, oh my God, this is my mom's. And I just absorbed it dynamically, like tooth and nail, just like made it mine. Mine. Anyway, I know this
reminds me of like the seagulls in the movies. Like,
mine. So I don't know really what my point is. I guess just the gift of awareness is knowing where you function from, and you don't have to make yourself wrong for it. I don't have to make myself wrong for that. I just get to look at it how I want.
It's actually so much easier if you just are willing to laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
Because, like it is so much easier because if you start laughing at yourself, you can't go into the wrongness.
Yeah.
And you are being silly and you're being weird and you're being you.
I totally started laughing.
But kind of messed up you.
Yeah.
And so it is that. Yeah. Like what a gift that is when you can laugh at yourself.
Yeah. And then I was like, can we go on a date? My treat.
We had sushi and went to see a musical.
It's good.
Oh, The Greatest Showman. Holy shit.
Go see it.
So awesome.
It's a movie musical that you saw.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just clarifying.
Yeah. So if your partner or someone asks, you want to go see a musical, just go, hell yeah.
Especially if you're the guy and it's the girl that's asking.
Yes, precisely. Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
It's a gender thing.
If you're a dude and your lady asks you, or if your man asks
especially if you've been spending a week and you haven't touched and she hasn't wanted to have anything to do with you.
And then asks you to
asks you to a musical.
Definitely a yes.
Yeah, want to go have sushi and a musical. You're like, oh, that's a semaphore code for.
So is this in the middle of where I came and sat on it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. Because it was just changing. So, but it was cool anyway. Because like we were looking.
It was cool anyway.
Because like I'm sitting out here, I'd Skyped her and we
were having a really intense conversation.
And then I actually walked in her room without knocking. Just
I was like,
right in. I know. That's what I was like. Afterwards, I'm like, that might have not been a good move. Like they could have been having.
That's what I was thinking when I saw Carlina walk in without knocking. I'm like, no, that might not have been a good move.
I gotta say, I wasn't thinking at that point. I was just went
just bulldozing.
That could have been really awesome though. I'm just thinking, Carlina, I just had this epiphany. Should that happen, in the unlikely event, should that happen?
What do you say?
What I'm saying is that
more than feelings.
Really thought I was over that. But apparently I love
I was just being sarcastic.
So what were you trying to say?
What I was trying to say is that
There's
as strange and awkward as that may become, just keep doing what you're doing. Like, come and sit on her. Everything will be okay.
Sorry, hang on, John. I know you're in the middle of something, but I just need to sit on yourself for a moment.
For those of you who don't know what the hell we're talking about with the sitting on thing,
it's a Christel thing.
I told them, I was like, you want to change the energy with me at any moment, sit on me.
But it wasn't just with her. She was also like, look, if the energy needs to be changed, I may just come and sit on you. And I gotta say, she hasn't yet.
No, still hasn't done it.
Apparently, I was just being that energy yesterday. Walked right into her room in the middle of a conversation with John and sat on her.
Which was great, because one of the things I became aware of with John as we were talking, I was like, one of us has to choose to be the algorithm interrupt here. Because this is one of the things that I realized about myself.
Welcome. Thank you.
Is that you know, like these old patterns of being that you don't necessarily know how to change for yourself in any one moment. And that's the gift we get to be to each other also, is like, you know, sitting on me is an algorithm interrupt. I can't be mad when you sit on me. It makes me laugh.
It did make her laugh.
Always. And it's so, it's
and I hadn't seen her since last week either. So,
yeah. So that's a tool that you can use.
You can sit on people. It's not quite access, but it might become access. We might change this.
Who does this ask belong to?
You gotta laugh at that. Really.
Embrace that tool.
So to wrap up this show, because we could probably just keep shooting the shit for the next 5 hours.
Sit on people. Laugh at yourself.
Oh, that's such a good tool.
Yeah, like
ask
whatever
for the
you
impossible.
Ask for the impossible.
Yeah, and whatever you gotta do, like be you, choose you, and acknowledge you and everything.
And let yourself be you in all of your hot mess.
Yes,
because this process and this, whatever you call this journey of choosing into being more of you, it's, you know, it's multifaceted.
And hot messes create amazing awarenesses.
Yeah.
You gotta say.
And let yourself just be there and then go, okay, cool. Now what would I like to choose? And that's the gift of having a new choice in every 10 seconds. Is this creating what I desire? Not really. What other choices do I have? Somebody please come sit on me.
All right. Take one for the team.
It's a really rough life around here.
Cool.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining in.
It's been a fun conversation.
Yeah. And we will see you guys next week. And if you liked it, give it a share.
About the same time.
About the same time.
Yeah. More coffee next week.
We do
About
this
time.
every week at this time.
Yeah.
So feel free to join us.
Coffee time.
Coffee. Bye.
Bye, guys.